Hello, everybody. Welcome. It's July the 24th, 2026. Danny Couples is in the house.
Hey, everybody.
He brought this guest our way, so he's in here to join us.
It's going to be a good one.
What a night. Do what?
He's going to be a good one, Mike's a really good guy.
He's going to be great. And how was your week?
It was busy. I've actually had to cut grass twice this week because all the rain that we've had lately, but it's been busy with work and home stuff. What about you?
Well, I did mow the lawn with the 115 degree heat index yesterday, and then of course today the humidity left us and it was like 80 something degrees, and I was like, where was this yesterday? I didn't know it was going to be like that, but it's been busy. I'm super busy. I wanted to give a few shout outs real quick. I wanted to make mention of a few people. First of all, Steve Scarborough from episode number 98. I meant to mention this last week, but I kind of forgot. There's Steve. He came to Tulsa. He's got a connection here to Tulsa, and he's like, "Hey, man, let's get together and have some lunch." And that's what we did. And I wanted to mention him. He is a crime scene. Well, he's retired from Las Vegas Metro, but you talk about a guy that's got. He's wrote many books. And when you write as many as he has, that's right on the money. He's a legend, really, in the world of crime scenes. So, Steve, hello. Glad that we had lunch and it was a lot of fun. And that hat he was wearing, I brought that for him. The other thing I want to mention, a couple of other people. I want to give a special happy birthday to Amber up there in Fort Wayne, Indiana. That's her husband, Nick. And what a husband. He's like, he'd reached out to me on Instagram and he said, "Hey, my wife is a super fan of yours."
Oh, happy birthday.
And yeah, 39. What a great birthday that is, because it just gets worse from there. So
it does. It goes downhill from there.
But anyway, so I wanted to say hello to Amber and her husband, Nick, and thank you for they sent a little something to the channel. So thank you for that. Nice. But great. I got a chance to visit with her. And what a fun conversation I had a couple of days ago. She's a lot of fun. So, and her husband's great as well. And I also want to thank Rob Martinez. He's a police officer at Notre Dame, and Rob is my buddy. And yesterday I was sitting in my police car, and I just happened to look over and catch a text, and they're like, "Hey man, we need somebody up here in Indianapolis like next Thursday. Can you do it?" And I was like, "Absolutely, I can do it." And so I'll be returning to go speak in just outside of Indianapolis, and I'll be speaking at the Indiana Association of Hostage and Crisis Negotiators, and this will be my second time to speak there. It's been about 7 or 8 years, so it'll be a good time going and visiting with some old friends and meeting new ones, and I'm looking forward to that. Matter of fact, there's actually somebody from Tennessee that's going to be speaking there.
Oh, really?
That's the only other speaker I know, actually, from Knoxville Police Department.
Oh, cool.
And yeah, she's great too. That's an interesting thing. And then I don't know if I've got any more to talk about here. I don't know. Let's see. Oh, I want to mention Phyllis's granddaughter is 10. She's 10 years old, and it's her birthday, and her name is Adeline Marie. And Adeline Marie. So happy birthday to your granddaughter, Phyllis.
Birthday.
She's super loyal. I appreciate it. I appreciate everybody being in here. The forensic lady. And forensic lady, welcome. Travis from Muskogee PD, Chris, my cousin Darren, Phyllis, Steph, lots of other people. I'll tell you what, in a couple of weeks, just for the people that are the first 48 connoisseurs, I'll kind of let the cat out of the bag. Tom Arnelli from Cleveland Homicide will be here. And he's been retired for a long time, but he'll be a ton of fun. And so we've got a line of guests that's just epic. This next guest is one of those people, and let's just kind of get after it. I'm gonna introduce him and you talk about somebody that's got his act together throughout life.
Yes, he does.
With some of these people, I tell you what, Danny, I just sit there and I'm just scratching my head going, as much as I thought I've done things in my life, I really haven't. I mean, I get these guys that come on, you know what I mean? I'm like, what was I thinking, you know? But Mike Breedlove's law enforcement career began in 1980 when he was accepted as a police officer with the Metro Nashville Police Department. His duties consisted of being a patrol officer and first responder to various calls in the downtown area of Nashville. And that was before it was really a cool place. It was probably like a ghost town, like it was in most big cities. He said before all those bars and stuff. But after 4 years as a police officer, Breedlove was accepted into the Tennessee Bureau of Investigation as a special agent criminal investigator. And TBI was on the forefront of being one of the top law enforcement agencies in the state. And I'm going to tell you something. It's one of the most respected in this country. And so what a privilege to work there. I have tremendous respect for him. Breedlove's first experience as a TBI agent was working undercover in East Tennessee, posing as a drug dealer. How fun is that? Oh, wow. And Breedlove later, that would be a lot of fun. Breedlove later went on to be assigned in counties west of Nashville. His primary duties were investigating complex homicides and suspicious deaths, along with officer-involved shootings, aggravated child abuse, and child homicides, along with various other crimes the district attorney's office would request. And that tells you a lot about this guest, ladies and gentlemen. Breedlove's proficiency in conducting thorough investigative work during his career allowed him to the honor of being chosen Agent of the Year in 2000 after solving a highly profiled cold case homicide. And after 30 years of service with the TBI, he retired in 2014. Breedlove was not quite finished because he was elected sheriff of Cheatham County, Tennessee, and he served 8 years there. This is a guy with 42 years of law enforcement experience and counting. And isn't that crazy? And let me tell you something. Jason White is not going to be 42 years. I can assure you of that. Not happening.
You going to run for sheriff, Jason?
I don't know.
Maybe.
Maybe. I don't know. So after completing his second term in 2022, the TBI reached out to Breedlove and invited him to return as a part-time contract investigator, serving the Bureau with statewide cold case homicide investigations. And I got to finish the rest of this because it's not much more, but it's just incredible. Breedlove's primary task involved reviewing hundreds of unsolved homicides committed in Tennessee, spanning back to the 1950s. This was an effort, the TBI, to link forensic genetic genealogy, DNA evidence between the victim and the murderer. Breedlove also took part in linking family members with several unidentified bodies discovered throughout the state using genealogical searching as well. Most of the victims were the result of active serial murders in the 70s and through the 90s, which is kind of cool. And that's my thing. That's what I love. I'm fascinated by that. Presently, he continues to be involved with law enforcement as a liaison for Tennessee's Department of Child Services, assisting in child fatalities in Middle Tennessee. And he also participates in a crime podcast, ladies and gentlemen. And let me tell you something. I want to be him when I grow up in that area because he's got like almost double the followers. So to remember to like and subscribe this channel, please. And check his out, which is called Tennessee Murder Trails. And we will talk more about that later. And what they do is they present various homicides he and his buddy agent worked during their time as state investigators. And let's bring on Mike, my new friend, Mike Breedlove.
Hey,
Thank
Mike.
you for being here.
Hey,
Welcome, Mike.
Where's my Metamucil? I'm tired.
Let me tell you though,
You're on.
I normally I don't read the whole. I don't. In yours, it's just every single little line there. It's so fascinating to me of what you were involved in, and just any one of those collectively or by themselves would be a huge achievement in anybody's career. And look at what you've done. I think that's just pretty tremendous. What a testament to what you've done for the law enforcement community in Tennessee. Really,
and he probably left a lot out too.
Well, he did. That's the short version of the bio. Believe me.
I'm just been blessed. Some people call it a calling, and some people never expected to go in this line of work. I think with me, it was a calling. I felt very strong at the age of 5 that I wanted to be a police officer because of a positive experience I had. And as a child, looking up to this mountain of a man and how he talked to me and all, it's something that just burned in my psyche that stayed there with me throughout. And then having the opportunity and the chance to work throughout my 40 some odd years, it was a true labor of love. And I loved every moment of it. I will say there were some tough moments and some moments I wish I wasn't in that crime scene. I'd rather been anywhere else, but I'm just been very blessed, and the years have gone by because of that so fast. And so I'm still blessed, and I'm blessed to be on your show, Jason. My gosh, I tell you, you're very well known throughout the country and the world now, and so it's an honor to be invited on and just.
The honor is all mine, buddy.
Yes, sir. And Danny, it's good to see you. We were in a training class together, so it's just good that it's so funny in the world of law enforcement. Over time, you stay with it long enough, you develop this friendship, all professional friendship and some personal, but with everybody that you run across. And it's just we're really lucky in the state of Tennessee. We've got some amazing people in law enforcement.
Yeah, you do, and some of them have been on this show, and I am honored to have them. I haven't met one yet that I'm not just thoroughly impressed with. That Danny knows a lot of good people out there in your state, and tremendous. So you wanted to be a police officer when you were 5. I mean, what was it in your life that actually kind of wanted? Was there something that you saw or some reason that you wanted to do?
I was riding. I just learned how to ride a bike, and I was riding my bike down this alley coming out on the street. And as I came out, I was trying to beat my friend who was running. And as I came out, this police car was coming down toward me. He ran off the side of the road, hit a tree. And I thought, this is it. I'm going to jail. And the officer got out of his car, and he was so shaken and so scared. And my father comes out. He hears the sound of the wreck, comes out on the front porch. And so, but the officer came out, and he got down on my level and just talked to me and told me how dangerous it was for me to do what I was doing. And he could, I could have been killed, and just talked to me in that very understanding role in which this guy, and of course, within his mind, he felt, I guess, lucky that he didn't kill a child. And so that just burned in my psyche. Wow. And that he was so patient. I really thought he was going to whip me and take me to jail. Mm-hmm. And, but then as I got older and got into middle school, my father actually and he wasn't in law enforcement. He worked as in the electrical company in Nashville, but he became friends with this homicide investigator. And so I was like a magnet to him. I wanted to hang on to his every word. And he took his time and was very patient. And when I first saw this guy on TV, I thought, this is it. This is what I want to do as a young teenager. This is the path I want to take. And so it was those two people who probably don't even remember me at all, but that's what molded my determination and that calling, so to speak, to want to go in this line of work.
Yeah, it's really amazing how something in your childhood can really change the course of your life. And when we talked previously, we have a lot of similarities as far as both wanting to be really in homicide at a young age, and that's not normal.
It's not. Well, and when we're kids, we're watching, the closest you can get is what you watch on TV, all these crime shows and all these good guys going after villains and bad guys. And that's what I wanted to do. But little did I know it was so much more than that. And there's a saying after a while, I think, especially after, I believe it was the year 2000 when CSI came out, there was just this massive interest and we got it at TBI where so many people were calling in and they wanted to know how they could be a CSI investigator. Wow. So, there was just this era or this, and so how it was glamorized on TV and how it really is. And I tell everybody, once you go in to work a terrible, horrible, gory crime scene, you'll never want to work another one again. It's not like it is on TV as they portray it. But there's something about it though that it's more than just that. The part it is truly a putting the puzzle together of and putting that and finding out who wanted this victim dead, who is this victim, who's the suspect, and so all that challenge in it is nothing like any other kind of job at all.
Yeah, it's like a 1,000-piece puzzle, and once you find out who the victim is, that's about 200 pieces, and then you're not going to get all 1,000 generally, but you're gonna work towards it to where you know what's up. So I love that. So you went on to the Nashville Police Department where you worked patrol, and that was in the time when they didn't have all those bars and stuff downtown. Is that correct? Is that what I've
So
heard from you?
all the good people, so to speak, the people who had jobs would leave, would go home at 5 o'clock, and then all the criminals would come out by 6. And so it was totally different in the downtown area, because there was the Grand Ole Opry that was there and a few things, but all the bars down on Lower Broad, that's the Mecca today. These bars were the places where knife fights, shootings, just things were happening and every night. Now it was a place where you learned quite quickly on when you showed up and you were the first responder to that crazy scene. But I got a lot of experience those 4 years, and even before that, when this homicide investigator I talked about, one of the things that he told me or really sunk in, and I didn't want to do this, but he told me, go to college, get your degree. And I said, well, I don't have to have a degree to get on the police department. He goes, that's right. He goes, but that degree is gonna open the doors for you later on down the road. Yeah. I didn't want to think about that, but I took his advice and I thought, well, I'll do a year. A year went by and I'll do 2 years. And so 4 years went by in a blink of an eye. And then that's when I went into it was accepted in Metro, not because I had a college degree, but just the fact that I really got lucky. Be accepted, but it did open the door to go into the Tennessee Bureau of Investigation, which was the place that so many people wanted to be a part of, but very few people got the opportunity. And I was one that I knew no one. There's a back in the day, it was if you worked for a police department, it would help if you knew somebody who was politically connected. I mean, I didn't know anybody, and I surely didn't know anybody at the Tennessee Bureau of Investigation, TBI. And they told me later that if I had somebody that called and recommended me, that they would have just passed me on, because they wanted everyone to start off with no connections and just
makes sense.
Yeah, and so that was very impressive, but also I understand I understood real quick why. But so I was one of the first Nashville police officers to get hired by the Tennessee Bureau of Investigation, which took me a little while to get on, but I stayed persistent.
So tell me a little bit about what that agency actually does.
The TBI was actually formed back in the 50s. There was a sawmill operator who was brutally murdered up in upper eastern Tennessee, and law enforcement back in the 50s just did not have the training. And 60s, it was just an evolution kind of thing for everybody. But there was a newspaper editor who wrote the need for some kind of state investigative agency to solve these unsolved homicides that were all over the state, and that got the legislature pushed to form the Tennessee Bureau of Criminal Identification, is what it was first called. And so in when it was under the Department of Safety, which is Tennessee Highway Patrol, state troopers. So it was a group of men who were former troopers who got to transfer over into the Detective Bureau or the Investigative Bureau. So that's how it started. And these agents, there were very few of them back in the 60s, maybe 12, 15 across the state. So there wasn't that many at all that started out. But as the needs became more so in the 60s, how turbulent the late 60s were, early 70s, and as a child living through all that and the assassinations and everything, and then so there was also more killings in the state. So by the 1980s, and actually 1982, the TBI became completely reorganized into an independent agency in which they did not answer to a governor or anybody political. They were an independent agency that worked pretty much alone. But part of it was that any investigations they worked had to be requested by the local district attorney's office, in whatever districts in the state. So that in turn turned TBI into a more of a professional agency in which we could go in and work political corruption, work on homicide, work on police-related deadly force encounter, and be that independent, unbiased group of people or person to go in and just find the facts and not be swayed with any other pressure or political pressure or whatever. So it was just an evolution as to where we are today. So in the 70s, 80s, and 90s, we touched on about there was a lot of serial murder cases, or a lot of serial murderers who were active in our state and other states around us, in the whole Southeast, out west, out everywhere, because law enforcement was not ready. They did not have the technology to connect the individual deaths of the individual bodies to one person or two people. And so that came also, and I'm probably getting ahead of myself, guys, I'm sorry, but we were on the forefront of having all these bodies that were dumped or discovered, and not all of them were serial murder victims. Some of them were just revenge killings or domestic related killings and so forth. But we knew that we had people in our state that were murdering women who were living, for the most part, high risk lifestyles. For the most part, several were just plain victims who were at the wrong place at the wrong time, and they got abducted and eventually murdered. So the TBI was basically set up to go in and assist the local police departments and sheriff's offices. And the role that I had was, I was assigned 5 counties, the judicial district, but anytime the police department or county had a homicide, it was up to them whether or not they wanted TBI to be called in. And so it was very important we as agents build a good, positive relationship with the local departments to let them know that we don't want to come in and take over your investigation, but we want to come in and help. We have the facilities and all the everything that's out there that's accessible to us, whether it's the forensic scientists and crime scene people that will come out and work your crime scene. As that evolved, once we started developing good relationships with sheriffs and police chiefs and all, and it became just a good collaborative group of investigators and TBI agents working together to solve that crime. We didn't want to get the fanfare or the attention. That was for the sheriffs and police chiefs. We just wanted to get in and help and do what we could to solve that cold case homicide, or that whodunit homicide. And some counties were a little more challenging than others. Our job also, unfortunately, was tasked to go after corrupt sheriffs, and we did. And so I never, at that time during my career, ever thought about becoming a sheriff. And that came later, and I was a reluctant sheriff at that. But our job was to develop good positive relationships with all the other law enforcement people, and then be that helping hand, help them. Because a lot of departments just didn't have the training, didn't have the expertise, especially, and didn't have the manpower to be dedicated to this one murder that's going to go way past 48 hours. It sometimes goes into days and weeks and months. So we did a lot of that, and along with political corruption cases, and unfortunately police related kind of cases, whether there were shootings or corruption and so forth. So we had a little bit of everything, whatever the district attorney requested us to go into to investigate.
Well, I know Tennessee got a lot of attention per se with that Buford Pusser case that happened earlier, last couple of years. I know that, and I thought when you first said what got you into law enforcement, it might be that Walking Tall movie, because a lot of law enforcement officers, especially in Tennessee, did, because it was one of those type movies.
It was, and Danny, exactly. I begged my parents to take me to see that movie, and they did. And I come out of there crying. My parents came out crying, and that was just that one extra thing that this is what I want to do, in my life. And he was a hero to so many. So things during that time in the 60s, and I believe Pauline Pusser's murder occurred in 1967. And but what was, and it was worked by TBI, but during that time, during the early years of the Bureau, the training and the expertise in gathering evidence really wasn't there as it evolved like everything else, has evolved with our kind of line of work. But that case stayed dormant pretty much. But once Hollywood got a hold of it, and it just blew up to where he became a national folklore legend. And so years and years went by, and my buddy agent Joe Craig, who does the podcast with me, he was a supervisor at the time, and just out of curiosity, he decided to go down into, I'll call it the murder room, but it was basically the file room in which we had all of our murder cases. And he decided he just wanted to read the case file. And once he started reading it, he realized, oh my gosh, there's so much here that wasn't done. There's so much here that we need to look at. And so he got permission from the director to actually, let's open this up and just look at it, and let's see what has been done, what hasn't, who's still alive, what can we do in this investigation to possibly open it back up. And there was enough suspicion and enough things that just did not add up to allow us to open it back up. Not as a judge of what was done back then as investigators, but just because we can't. It's like code cases. You really can't be in the shoes of the people back in the 60s or 70s because they didn't know any of the technology that we have today. Right. So, but based on the technology we have today, it could help us along to be able to determine whether these particular things that were alleged to have happened could have actually happened, could have physically happened. And so one of the agents out of East Tennessee, who's gotten a lot of grief by so many people, because there's two camps. There's one that loves Buford Puss, one that thinks,
we've met him.
Yeah, and so it's a very emotional thing, because this is their hero, as he was my hero. But going into looking at it with blinders off, and okay, let's look at the facts. What was then and what are now? What was done? And I really hope, and I think we will be able to present the whole case as we know it from the TBI perspective and what we found. And I think the whole bottom line was that if everything that happened then, if by today's standards, if it was presented to a grand jury, Buford Pusser more than likely would have been indicted by a grand jury. It doesn't mean he would have been convicted, right, but just from the evidence that we were able to get, and I'm probably opening a little can here, but it's been said and all. So that,
it has. But I'll tell you what, even if he, I think that if it was pre-movie, I think he'd have been convicted. There's a strong chance he may have been convicted. Post-movie, probably. I think it would have been really tough in at least that part of the state. You know what I mean?
Well, and the interesting part about it is during that time in 1967, no one knew or cared about a sheriff in a small southern West Tennessee county that, was involved in what it just wasn't. There was nothing out there about that until, and when you're in Nashville, there's very little news. We would hear very little news from something that happened a county or two over, whereas now it's an event, state and worldwide basically. But no one knew about this guy, this sheriff, until someone got a hold of it and read just this article about it and decided to. And I think the writer once said that about 70% of what was in the movie was not factual, So and it's Hollywood. But it turned this person into a worldwide hero, and part of it we wanted that as well. I mean, it was the turbulent '60s, Vietnam and everything else, and so we wanted the good guy to win against evil. And
especially when he's the creative consultant.
Right. Jason said it best. He said, Tennessee had a rock wall with faces like they do at Mount Rushmore.
Yeah.
Buford Pusser's face would be on there
yeah.
with Elvis Presley and everybody. Dolly
Yeah,
Parton.
and Davy
Oh,
Crockett.
Yeah.
I mean, that's the ones. It's Davy Crockett, isn't that right? I don't want
Yeah,
to put the wrong guy on the mountain.
Yeah.
But yeah, for TBI to be etching his face off that mountain, that is not an easy thing to do. That right there moved my level of respect for your agency through the roof. I mean, that really for me, and I already had tremendous respect, but that right there told me a lot about the agents that you've got working for you and just the integrity of that agency to be able to. This isn't an easy case. You already knew that there was going to be a motherload of backlash.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. And we knew that. And we felt also that look at it in this aspect is that here we are, law enforcement going into opening up an investigation of a law enforcement officer. You know, law enforcement has been vilified so much in these last few years and all, but here we're going in to look into whether this actually could have happened in the way it was proposed to and written about. And so here we are. And on top of that, we're going in to scrutinize also the agents during that time, our own agents. And so what agency, it would be a lot easier to just say, no, we're not going to touch that. But I'll say this, if it wasn't for Joe Craig, who's my podcast partner and we work murders together, you know, he stood up and said, this is the right thing to do. You know, this is because this is historical. And so this is and it comes down to this, guys. It comes down to when everything's said and done, it comes down to this is a simple domestic related murder. It's a domestic murder that occurred in which it was set up to be something else than it was. And the evidence proved that it was something else than it was. It was a domestic related murder, and it wasn't. They worked so hard, but I will give them the credit. They worked so hard, the TBI did, in running these Dixie Mafia guys down and these other people that are down, and they just couldn't put that puzzle together to make it to click. But everything else was swirling around the domestic issues they were having and the discussions he had with others about wanting to kill her and other things. So, but it's something we'll look at. I know it's been scrutinized and all. I've just, seen it from my end as a TBI agent, looking at it with the blinders off and read the whole case file. And I was even asked to write part of the report and all. And so it was one of those in which, it's just.
It's an epic deal, and it's not over. I mean, I hope that, and I don't know what they're going to do, but I hope that they kind of re-examine like Louise Hathcock and some of that too. And just kind of, I'd be interested to know what that shows when, with the technology of today. And that's, and for the naysayers that they've come on here when they've at least messaged me, but hey, listen, here's the deal. It's for Pauline Pusser. I mean, they're like, well, who cares? You get a lot of that. Well, yeah, we all care, and we need the truth, and that's what it's about. And it's still kind of cool. I'd love to take some of this today technology and go examine some of the old cases all over the place. I think it'd be neat just to do it, just to see what we did come up with, kind of a deal.
And it's the one thing that Joe Craig emphasized on from the start to even today is it was about her, and it's going to be about Pauline. She was forgotten. She was a footnote, and everyone forgot about. She was a victim of a horrible homicide. And Napoleon once said, and I remember this. Somebody said it to me, and it just stuck with me. Napoleon once said, "History is a fable agreed upon." So, in everything that we've been taught now, there's always other things in the background, and even today, of what really happened, what behind the scenes, just like any homicide that we've worked. There's always the behind the scenes and the other stuff that really doesn't come out because it may not be part of that investigation, but just other things that built up to lead you to where you're at, and all. So it's an interesting case, and people will debate it, and that's good that people will debate it back and forth. And I do know that if we could have applied the methods that we know we've been taught today, he would have been arrested shortly after our death.
Yeah, maybe there'll be a show like on Tennessee Murder Trails or something about that case. That would be a good one for that.
That would be good.
We hope maybe one day, we'll see.
Well, let's talk about Jenny Jackson. That's a
Okay.
case that you'd kind of discussed with me, and you, Amanda, you should have some pictures of that case. That case. Tell us a little bit about how that got started and what's that about.
This particular case was very unique in the sense that not only was it a unique, crazy murder, and I've worked a lot of them in my career, but it was also a case, I had to say, kind of like divine intervention. Things just started coming in quick. And let me tell you a little bit. Jenny Jackson, she was the daughter of a very well-known family in Dixon County, the Jacksons, and her family was in politics, in the medical field, doctors, politicians, and everything. And Jenny was just basically a mom with 2 kids. Really didn't excel personally herself, but she was taken care of by the family and all. And just the sweetest lady you would meet, just the typical Southern socialite, so to speak. And but she had left to go. She lived on a 300-acre farm, and she had left to go to a bar. But she had drove up from her house, excuse me, and parked at a gas station and called a cab, and the cab took her to the bar. And then on into the night, there was everybody was going home. It was closing up. She called the cab company. They were tied up, and she was discussing it with the bartender that she had no way home. And there was one lone guy left in the bar, and he asked her where she lived, and she told him. And so he said, "Well, I'll give you a ride." And that was the last time she was seen. Jenny was, as I say, like a social butterfly, and it wasn't uncommon for her to just not talk to her kids for 4 or 5 days. So about a week went by, and her kids had been trying to get in touch with her. She had missed a birthday. They found her car parked at this gas station, and so the Dixon Sheriff's Office was called in to start a missing persons investigation. And it just wasn't like her to just totally be gone. And so the new detective assigned to the case went to the last place, this bar. And then when he walked into the bar, the bartender who was there that night was there. And she and the detective were discussing. And he was he's getting information of how she was dressed, what she had. And she happened to actually have a dog with her at the time too. And the taxi driver brought the dog. It was a golden retriever to the bar. Bartender said, "You're not bringing the dog in." And so it stayed outside while she was in there. But the dog was back at the farm. And so, as the investigation was going, the bartender said she left with a guy, and she goes, "Well, do you know who this is?" And she turned, and the guy was sitting in the bar, just happened to be, and she goes, "That guy right there." So the investigator goes over, talks to him, gets him outside, and he just kind of got some vibes about this guy. He's a new investigator, but as he's talking to him, he was just hesitant about giving just general information. So he goes around, looks at his truck, takes his tag number down, gets his information, goes back to the sheriff's office, and said, "Got this guy who said he took her back to her, didn't take her to the farm, but he dropped her off at the Kroger's, that she wanted to go to Kroger's before she went home. And that's the last time that anybody's seen her." And so when he told his supervisor that who the guy was, his name is Jerry Davidson, he goes, "Oh my God, you got to be kidding. Oh God." And so the investigator, the supervisor, calls me immediately, and he goes, by that time I knew she was missing, and that they were doing an investigation. And he goes, "Guess who picked her up and took her home?" And I said, "Who?" And he goes, "Jerry Davidson." And I went, "Oh my God, she's dead." Everybody knew in the law enforcement circle who Jerry Davidson was. And he was just recently paroled out of prison. He has a long history of kidnapping, rape of children. There's just a long list starting early on in his life, and he was in his 40s at the time. And so we knew more than likely if she went home if he took her back to her house or her place, that she was dead. So immediately we started with a search, called in Highway Patrol, other people. We started doing a grid search on her farm, and we found a trail that had belongings all off the trail, identifying the clothes, everything that she had on that night, including a pillow that she had with her, also a cell phone. And back then we had brick phones. We found her brick phones, so we knew we had a pretty good size crime scene area. And at the same time, we're looking for Jerry Davidson. When Jerry was paroled, let me say this, and this is the only time in my whole career we've had this incident or this experience. When Jerry was paroled, prison psychiatrist contacted all the law enforcement agencies by mail and let them know that he's being released, he's being paroled out, and he will reoffend again. So Jerry started this little tour of libraries around in different counties. And so we in law enforcement, chiefs and sheriffs, we're calling each other, and Jerry has showed up here. I'm in a little town called Kingston Springs, Tennessee, and have an office there in Kingston Springs. And I get the call from the police chief. He goes, Jerry's in our library. So me and him immediately jump in the car, go up to the library. He's sitting there, and we motion him to come out, and pretty much told him that if he comes back to our town, that, and I said, Jerry, I know what you're doing, I know what you're looking for, and you need to leave. And so he said a few things, and I said, we're gonna have a grave made dug specially for you. And we knew he was looking for that one person that he could befriend or talk to and take. And so we were all really worried that there's going to be a victim out there, and one of us is going to be saddled with it. So Jerry's on the run. He let
me ask you this: I don't know if I heard you right. I know he kidnapped and he raped many times before, probably, but had he killed before?
Not that we know of.
Okay.
Now, he mutilated a victim with a knife, but he hadn't killed anybody that we know of. I'll put it that way. Now, he had been out for I think 2 or 3 years. Got a job in a Nashville hospital. Was a perfect employee. He came to work every day, never missed a job. But his job was cleaning surgical instruments used in surgery. And so it's like a chapter out of Hannibal Lecter. He had like 3 deadbolts or 3 locks on his bedroom door, living with his mother. And once we got in there, we found all these books on incisions, cutting. He had all these scalpels, all these other that he had stolen from the hospital. And so we're working that and seeing this horror room that he's got all this. He was just obsessed with cutting. And so we were, as we're working this, things started really clicking fast. We're at the scene at the farm. And at this point, we get a call from another county sheriff just adjacent to where we were at, who said, hey, I've got some deer hunters who walked up on what looks like a shallow grave. We're on the way up there. And so he gets up there, and they call me back, and they said, yeah, it's a shallow grave. The body is partially eaten by animals, it appears. So I immediately get up there in this very rural area and go up this logging trail. And as I'm going up this trail, there's just a treasure trove of evidence on each side, from cigarette packs to beer cans, to just newly opened stuff, clothing and stuff, just all kinds of stuff, all the way up to where the body is. So it's a treasure trove of evidence. Once I got to the body, we could tell, that there was definitely some animal activity. So my first job was we've got to protect her before any more animals, get on her and all. But I was able to determine that her head was missing. It wasn't by animals. She had been decapitated. And so at this point, we made the decision we're going to call the University of Tennessee Forensic Anthropology Department that was led by Dr. William Bass at that time. And so he told me, yeah, absolutely, I'll send a team up. And by that time, it was getting dark. And so I had gotten a tarp and basically covered the whole burial area with the tarp just to keep animals away. We had a deputy posted down on and near about a half mile from the road where the treasure trove of evidence laid. So once we got there the next day, we were able to really take our time. And but I will tell you this, and it's at this point, it's been so long ago, but at the time I was having a little bit of a problem with the sheriff of that particular county. And I was investigating him for he had been allegedly and had been abusing inmates. And so some of the stuff that he was alleged to have done, so they gave it to me to look into it. So he didn't like me very much. And I asked him, I said, look, let's put our differences aside and let's work together on this. If you can just make sure the scene is protected, we'll be here in the morning to start processing. And when I got there the next morning, I got there to a completely different scene. He decided to have his brother who owned a bulldozer to clear the whole path up to where her body was, and all this evidence was buried.
Wow.
So that was the only time in my career that I really thought about shooting a fellow officer. I was so mad, just so angry.
Wow.
We had to be methodical in digging out all this evidence, and
Oh my gosh,
it was just a mess. So, but we persevered. It didn't stop us. We just had to get more people out there so I had the before. Luckily, I took pictures before and then the after scene. And we came to court, he had to explain why he did what he did. Just stupidity. All I wanted him to do is protect the scene. Yeah. Well, during the process of that, the sheriff of the county that she was from had actually found another scene, a little campsite a half mile from there with connected. All these trails were connected, and this was a campsite. And so in that campsite were the victim's items like billfold, ID, prescription pills or bottles, just different stuff commingled with our suspect, Jerry Davidson. So this guy was very disorganized. So once we were the UT anthropology people got there, and they did such an amazing methodical excavation of her body. And so with that, they were able to find a cigarette butt in the grave site and a few other things. When we actually got her out and turned her over, she had been eviscerated. She had actually been cut open, and several of her organs had been removed and then put back in her body, and her head was missing. So this is a real ghoul of a guy who was obviously curious about cutting people, and he had the victim. In another county, by this time, word is out, and it's on the media. We got the word out, and the sheriff of another county happens to be driving down this road, and he looks over and sees the truck. And as he sees it, he walks in to this standalone little bar out in the middle of nowhere, and he has a deputy with him. And so Jerry's sitting at the bar with a lone female, and he goes up, and he knew Jerry, knew his reputation. So he goes up, and Jerry had his hands in his pocket. And the sheriff went over and said, "You don't have any guns on you, do you?" Just tiny. And he grabbed his hand, and Jerry had a pistol, holding a pistol. And so there was a little struggle, but they were able to disarm him and get him into custody. So at that point, everything kind of come together. It was way before social media and all. It just happened to be that these different places. And then I started doing a backtrack because it had been almost 2 weeks. Where was Jerry during all this time? We'd learned that he never showed back up at work. He was a stellar employee, never showed. But we learned that he went to Knoxville and then also came back. And once it got on the news, we were able to find people, bars that he had been to. And some of the bars, he really creeped them out. And one in particular that stood out was a female a bartender also. And he was in the bar. He wouldn't even exchange anything. He just wanted to sit and drink beer and watch her, wouldn't even respond to her. She got a little creeped out. She calls her boyfriend down there. And as she calls him, Jerry gets up and goes over to her, stands up against the bar, and he starts coming over the bar. And little did he know that she had a .357 Magnum underneath the bar, and she had it pulled and pointed at his stomach. And she's telling him, get away from me. And as he was getting closer, her boyfriend comes in, and he grabs a hold of him and throws him out. And then, but Jerry didn't pull a gun or anything like that. But he was at different places doing some really, really weird stuff that we were able to piece him where he was at during his whole time. And I got the opportunity to sit down and talk with him several times. And by that time, I tried to mend my differences with him because he remembered how I talked to him back in the library at that time. But he started talking with me and to me, but he was talking to him about himself in third person, which was really weird. So I went along with him in third person. But he was obsessed with playing games with us about where her head was. And so that was truly his trophy. We found a toolbox that belonged to him in another part of the woods. It was burned out. We felt very strong that he drove around with her severed head in the back of this toolbox, but we were never able to recover Jenny Jackson's head from the investigation. We did go to trial. He was tried by a jury and given the death penalty. But the whole thing about this was a guy who lived a life of crime and assaults and rapes of children. And these guys are just getting out. Now that's not him. This is another case. But I'm sorry, Jason. I meant to send a picture of him, and I'd forgotten to get him in there. But he anyway, it got to that point where now we knew he was going to hurt somebody, and he did it in such a horrible fashion. We also, in his truck, he had chained the victim to the passenger side of his truck, had to chain the locks, everything. It was just something out of a horror movie, but didn't have to happen. So he's still in prison. He's
still there.
He's still there. And, the death penalty in Tennessee is kind of I'm at the point in my career, I just don't believe in it, because what's cruel and unusual about the death penalty is the fact that what's cruel and unusual about punishment is what the family has to go through, waiting all these years, and they really don't get that final closure.
Have you ever thought about going back and talking to him now?
I did a few years ago. Joe, my podcast partner, we were sitting in Mullen, and I have gone to prisons and talk to people well after the case has gone. That's not the only one, but several, just to go and talk to them and see if they would open up. And some opened up and just told everything. And others, where I had questions about that particular scene, why this was done in this fashion. Well, I learned, easily that it was, but I'll give you an example of that in a minute. But I went back to the prison to talk to him, and his appeals were all exhausted. They did, reversed not his conviction, but his sentence down to life without parole. So we thought, well, okay, it's fine. At least he's not going anywhere. But the death penalty is not going to go much quicker anyway. Most of them die of natural causes anyway, which is the sad part. But he still maintained that he had appeals, and that he started talking in his third person talk, and he just wouldn't let go of where her head was. And we
wacko.
Yeah, that doesn't sound like a first rodeo kind of kill to me.
Yeah.
No. It sounds like something that he's probably been involved in other things. Just out of curiosity, what was his years of activity as far as what year did this happen again?
This happened in September of 1995, and so he had been committing crimes for a good 20, 30 years before that. Even started as a teenager. He had a pretty long history, and he served some time in prison. He had actually a tattoo on his arm called Legal Eagle. He turned into the guy to get legal advice because he had been in and out of prison so much. And he would always be, let out, in his time.
Yeah, it made me think of a case, and I looked it up while you were sitting here talking. It's a case I haven't thought about in many, many years, and I wasn't even sure if I even remembered it correctly, but there was a lot of mysterious deaths that occurred in the panhandle of Texas from like 1978 to 1990, where there's belief that the individual that was involved in that had surgical experience. I was a scrub tech for 10 years, so I'm not a killer, ladies and gentlemen, but I was sitting there thinking about that when I was like, and it happened in Texas. And I was just kind of interested in that, because when you said that, it just popped into my brain about this situation where a lot of people have been killed over there. So I didn't know, does he have any connections that way, or I don't even know if he was a surgical tech, or no, he was an instrument tech, probably is what his.
Just clean instruments. Yeah. And he was so disorganized though. And, he did kind of stupid stuff to try to cover it up. For instance, his passenger seat, instead of, he had done something to her while she was sitting there, because he cut out a great big area of foam out of his passenger seat, covered it with a pillow. Once we got in possession of his truck, we were able to find blood down in the very bottom on the metal, and it turned out it was DNA. We did DNA on it, and it was her blood. And so just little stuff where he really didn't clean up or cover his tracks. I will say this: we had and one of the cases that we kind of discussed earlier was one of my career unsolved cases is a violent abduction of a 17-year-old in 1987. Jerry was the first suspect that we had to look at. He actually was still in prison, but we had to confirm that he wasn't out on a furlough, because this would have been actually something that he would have done. We were able to eliminate him on that one.
Huh, interesting.
Yeah.
Fascinating stuff. I mean, this sounds like a really interesting killer that would be a trip to sit and visit with him, you know, because like I said, I mean, and you believe it too. I mean, he's probably good for. Is there any other cases that kind of, I mean, you don't have to mention their names, but is there any other cases that kind of fit that scenario somewhat over there in that part of the country where he was at?
Well, not to the degree that he did. He did do kidnappings and use knives and all that, but not to that degree. I think this was just an opportunity for him. I think once he got it, he probably wanted to do more. I really do. But he was also kind of aging out. He was in his mid 40s, and also he had done a lot of his terrible stuff. This was the worst, of course, but nothing that really we could tie him with, because we had to compare the times we had these crimes to when he was in jail and when he wasn't. And so he was committing crimes even way before my time in the 70s, early 70s and all. So it was a very interesting case.
Yeah, just out of it, with respect to him, I mean, what did you guys learn about him in his past? Which did he have some bizarre behavior back when he was a kid, or was he victimized or anything along those lines?
He came from, as a lot of psychopaths do, came from a very dysfunctional family. His brother, he was killed in Vietnam. That had a lot of stress on the family. And Jerry was, I guess, kind of the throwaway kid. They just, he was just, after his brother's death, there was a lot of things that happened, I guess, in his background. Something happened to cause him toward the life. But also, during that time, guys, we also had, we did have bodies being dumped, shot, strangled, decomposed, and also there was a lot of those, especially around on the interstates and highways, in which we felt real strongly that more than likely is going to be, ideally, would probably be a truck driver or someone, because we had a lot of prostitution at the truck stops during that time, and it was just a hard, you had a victim and the suspect who both come together. They had no relationship other than she's high risk victim, and they get together, and the victim winds up getting strangled or killed. And so we had our share of those. We had a case that was going on for quite some time called the Red-Headed Murders, and Danny, you may have heard of them.
I have, yeah.
And so there's actually a Amazon Prime flicks that just came out called Murder 101. It's the high school kids from Elizabethton who has kind of taken on these red-headed murder cases, and it's interesting and on what they were, how the work that they did and all that. But we knew that there was a lot of red-headed murders, not only in Tennessee, but Virginia, Kentucky, Arkansas, Mississippi. And so it involved also all of us investigators getting together and brainstorming, and there was several suspects, one being a guy named Jerry Johns, who actually, one of the victims he strangled, and put her in a culvert. She survived and was able to identify her. And then while he was in prison, they knew he was tied into others. He had this obsession against redheads, and for some reason. But he died in prison, but we were able to take his DNA and tie him into another homicide, another unidentified victim. So, but there was not only him, just a lot of them, and there are some that are out there today. They just happen to age out. And serial murders itself, Jason, there is a trend, and think about this. You really don't hear about any active serial murderers that are operating right now in the country. And part of the reason is, the big part is the fact that the opportunity of them getting caught is way up there. They're because of the DNA technology and the genetic genealogy and everything else, but just basically the DNA thing. So we've seen, that's been a good thing about the advances of DNA, is no matter what you do, unless you just dispose of that body and they're never found, which we have a lot of those. But we've really seen a drop in active serial murderers who are active out there, because they know that the odds are great they're going to be caught. I'm sure.
And flock cameras too.
Oh, everything. The technology is there.
Yeah.
Think about this. If we have a child abduction
Yeah.
in the 70s or 80s, it may have went across the state in as far as news, but once Amber Alert came online and everybody in social media, that's the one good thing about social media.
Yeah.
Word gets out there super fast.
You bet.
And so there's a lot of eyes, but that,
Well, I want to cover these. I want to cover a couple of more things. You're absolutely right.
Okay.
I want to talk just briefly. So you get out of you work 4 years, or not Memphis. My gosh,
Nashville.
I feel so bad for you if you work there.
Yeah.
Nashville, and then you go to TBI for 30, and then you retire, and you decide to become a sheriff, and you did that for 8 years at Cheatham County. And so, did you enjoy that?
I was nuts for doing that. I tell you, there's several years before that, people would come up and say, "Why don't you run for sheriff?" And I would say, "There's no way I'd want to be a sheriff. I know, there's just no way in the world. The headaches they've got, the jail on top of that, and just on and on." But I really argued against it so much. Not that I thought I was going to be a great sheriff, but I just did not want that. I did not want that burden of that, because I knew sheriffs had a lot on their shoulders as far as. But with my own home county and other places, but specifically my own home county, there was lots of overdose deaths, overdoses, heroin. Oh, sorry, not heroin, but prescription pills were just spin out like candy from doctors, and so we were having a lot of overdoses. And also deaths. And so I went to the sheriff, we talked to him, and other TBI agents said, "Look, we want to come in and let's work some operations. Let's go after some of these drug dealers." And he just wouldn't, not because I don't know the fact why. I don't know if he just didn't want us, in the county working, but it was just a point where it was almost like, well, if they're getting involved in all this, then they just deserve what they get, and they don't. These were just people from good families and people from all walks of life dying, and it was just so. As time went on, I was just really frustrated seeing how it was going, and seeing the fact that drug dealers were operating openly in our county, and it just pissed me off. And so, after talking about it in detail with my wife, my friends, Joe Craig, everybody, I decided, okay, I'm gonna go. I'm gonna do this. I'm gonna go and try to knock this king off his mountain. And what I found out later, and Danny, you may know this, is there was a trend across the state of Tennessee where people were just tired of the good old boy way of things that were going, where things weren't being done. And so I just happened to be the lucky one in that I ran on the fact that I'm going after drug dealers, and I'm gonna do everything I can to get control of these drug deaths and everything that's going on. So I ran and got elected, and I was determined I was going to back up my word, and I did. We got a great group of people together, and we started going after drug dealers. Actually, I went to them first, knocked on their door, let them know that I knew what they were doing, and told them that either they've got a choice of either stop, leave the county, or they're going to go to jail. A lot of them went to jail because they knew that. And there were some that were untouchable and boasted that they were untouchable, but we touched them. We got them, and they went to prison. And so, and then it changed in that the big thing was we were having so many deaths that how can we stop these deaths? CPR wasn't doing it. And then this wonder drug,
Narcan,
came on.
Yeah.
With the medical, EMS director, and I asked them how much would it cost to get Narcan, and it was pretty expensive back then, but they were gracious in that, look, we'll train your deputies. And there was a little bit of pushback from the other sheriffs. Why are you doing this? I said, it's all about saving lives. I got people dying, and these families are just. So we started saving lives and what we would do with some of these victims who had OD'd once or twice. By this time, everybody had body cameras. We would show them their their process of what they were, a lot of them were going through that agonal death rattle and were literally dying. And we'd shoot them up with Narcan, bring them out. A lot of them would come out pissed off, mad, fighting. And, but we felt we were having a good effect on it, a positive effect. At least we were saving. Little did we know that once Narcan became easily available, which was great, to the public and all that, then we started, our statistics went down because people weren't calling the EMS. They were
right,
buddy up or doing so. But I still believe, the county itself became one of these in which the drug dealers, especially in Nashville or Clarksville, they wouldn't come to Cheatham. They were too afraid to come to Cheatham because the judges were putting them in prison, in jail and prison. So we were really hard, cracking down hard on them. And,
Amanda, let's go ahead, Danny.
I was just going to say there was a lot of other counties that followed suit from what you did over there. And, it caught on, and that was a big deal back then. We were having a lot of deaths, drug-related deaths, and what you did made a big difference in this state.
Well, it probably put the pressure on the counties, other counties around you.
Yeah, it just wasn't me, but I really felt that if we could do something, because I got to start really getting to know a lot of the families, and these weren't. Not that, these were people that were struggling, but also these were just, some of these were great people. I had the oldest person that we had that OD'd was 72 years old, and he wanted to figure out what all the big fuss was about these different drugs, and he got all these different drugs, lined them up in his kitchen, and took them and died from them. Just craziness. But I think we're seeing this trend now, Danny, where we're not seeing as many fentanyl deaths, maybe so in Oklahoma and all that too. I think the reality is hit. Plus, of course, we have hopefully less fentanyl. I don't know. I'm sure you can still get it, but it's just was one of those where people, when they were taking heroin wasn't enough. That's when while they went to fentanyl, they wanted, they were chasing that dragon until.
Yeah. Well, there's stuff even out there that's even worse, car fentanyl and stuff that'll actually go through your gloves. So. It's really, really scary stuff. So you end up leaving from there. Amanda, roll that video for us, please.
Cheatham County Sheriff Mike Breedlove retires today after 8 years in the position, but he has served in law enforcement for more than 40 years in Tennessee. Most notably, he worked the missing teen Leanne Green case in 1987. On Christmas Day in 2019, his team discovered Michael Mosley, the man convicted in the deadly Midtown stabbings. They also found 9-year-old Jordan Gorman in the woods after he was missing for days in 2020. Well, in his 2 terms, Breedlove pursued drug dealers in Cheatham County, a mission he is very proud of. Ooh, I like that Magnum PI. At a ceremony today, state officials declared today Mike Breedlove Day in honor of his work. While he loves his job, he says he knows it's time to take a step back and relax in retirement.
This is always a forward-moving kind of career that you need to be always open for better ideas and new things and all that from the technology standpoint. And 42 years, I know when it's time. I'd rather leave on my own than be pushed out, whereas when is that guy going to retire?
He's not totally relaxing in retirement. Breedlove was elected to serve on the county commission.
Very cool. Very cool.
I love that picture.
I was a terror to be reckoned with those glasses earlier.
Yeah. What an intimidating. Not that one.
No,
well, I wasn't thinking of that one. I was thinking of the young cop picture.
Yeah, I still get made fun of on that.
That's great. So you go on from there, and then the Tennessee Bureau of Investigation, they basically reach out to you and they want you to look at some of these cold cases. Hey, I just out of curiosity, what was that like? You worked homicides. I'm sure you touched cold cases as well. As a detective or an investigator with them, you had cold cases, I'm sure, of your own. Yes. But what are the challenges what's some advice or the challenges that you really faced as a cold case getting into that, where that's all you were doing? What are some of the things that you were seeing that's really something that people need to hear about?
Yeah. At the time, there was only one agent in the state who was working cold case homicides. And he was it was one of those where when you've got so many, how do you choose what which one to really look at. And so my purpose at this point was because I was asking those questions. What is it you really want me to do? Because I mean, and they started off with, we really would like for you to review these cases. There's 500 plus, and rate them on a scale, a matrix of 1 to 5. 1, that this one really needs to be reopened, to 5, there's just nothing there. And so I started that process and would start, and everything was digitized. I could all do it, and every case file was downloaded, but I would go also into the murder room and talk about and pull the original case file and read it. And some of them were so fascinating, just so fascinating. I had to keep myself from getting caught up, because there were letters in there from the first director, who was an FBI, used to be an FBI agent, who went after Pretty Boy Floyd and all that. And there was writings or letters in there between him and J. Edgar Hoover. So just these cool original letters signed by J. Edgar Hoover I thought was pretty special. But anyway, going through all these murders, rating them, and then once we rated the murders of 1 to 5, then I would reach out to the investigative agencies personally, sheriff's offices, police departments, and find out if they still had anything. And the ones that would be rated high, number 1, would be the ones that have forensic value attached to them, would have some kind of evidence that they collected that had blood, semen, hairs, something that right in today's world that we could take and run with. And so the difficult part is, and it's happened everywhere, but it happened in Tennessee quite a bit. Not all departments, but a lot. When departments come, when police chiefs come and go, sheriffs come and go, sometimes they look at all that evidence and go, why is this in here? We don't need this, throw it out. And not really realizing that it would have value later on. I never thought that as a young investigator that there would be this stuff called DNA and so, but some agencies still had their evidence. They had a great system of keeping it would be far in a box somewhere stored. But we methodically started looking at the cases in which we know if we can find the evidence, if it's still there, and we can run with it. One of the other things that I was asked to do that I really enjoyed also was that because of the advances in DNA, we also had a system called genealogically genetic searching. Basically, it's a big word for a company that we contracted with and worked with named Orthram, and I'm sure y'all are familiar with this company. It's out of Texas, and what they were doing, they were kind of married into a lot of these different genealogy companies like Ancestry DNA and different companies. And a lot of people who would submit their DNA I think one of the questions would ask, would you submit your DNA for law enforcement to, for what, like, any kind of crime, that unsolved crime? And a lot of people said, yeah, sure. And so that started, in which we had all these unidentified bodies that had been discovered from the 50s all the way to the 90s and on, that we just had no idea who they were. And here we are, Danny and Jason, we have missing persons, a lot of them that have never been found. And then we have unidentified bodies that we got their body, we've got their dental records in the system, we've got everything, but we just can't identify who this victim is. Yeah. I had personally had 2 of them in Cheatham County. One I inherited before she was dumped in 81, and then another one that was dumped in 85 that I got and started working on. The leads were very small because of the fact that you got a victim, she's either in good shape or most of the time they would decompose. But UT Knoxville was able to take the remains of all these and keep them and keep the DNA. So we started sending. We were able to get a grant from the governor, and that we were able to send, I think, 16 victims. And I told them before I came on, I said, if you give me your word that that we could submit 2 of the victims I have in Cheatham County, and they said absolutely. So we started sending these victims. We would get possible family trees of who this victim belonged to, and then basically we'd reach out and code call them, and I'd code call families and talk. And sometimes on the phone it'd be hard because they would think you're scamming, when you're calling and you're talking about. But some families would tell me, yeah, we have a relative that's been missing all these years. We never heard back from her or him. So we would ask them if they would, we'd go and actually knock on the door, meet with them, ask them if we could do the buccal swab, and they would submit and give us their DNA, and then we would have a hit that was their loved one. So we really started knocking the ball out of the ballpark on those unidentified bodies, and that in turn also led to other leads and new leads.
Absolutely.
And so
Yeah.
we started running those leads.
Yeah.
The downside,
Like
a lot of people
boyfriends and ex-boyfriends. And
yes, exactly. Yeah. And so, and a lot of them that were our suspects, they were either killed or in prison, dead, or died in prison, and so forth. But still, it was one of those good things that we were doing to help, and all the states are doing it. And all the states are. I just watched a thing in Michigan State that just solved a cold case murder of a 14-year-old that's been 40 some odd years old. And once they identified the victim, and it's him, and they call him up, and he's kind of dodging them, but he does agree to come in to meet with them, and he commits suicide on the day he's supposed to come in. So they were able to get his DNA and positively matched him with the victim, and so they were able to close that case. So
we did that at Murray County with a 50-year-old case just recently, that she was found in 1974.
Wow.
And her remains also were up in Knoxville, and with the genetic genealogy, we'd solved the case.
It is just the best thing for criminal investigators in this day and time. But I will say this as advice for criminal investigators, the young ones coming up, you still got to get out there and knock on that door. You still got that gumshoe detective, and even cases that have gone for a long time, cold cases, sometimes people who would never have talked about it 30 years ago, sometimes they'll talk about it. And
yeah, you're right about that. And the money's in just dealing with people and talking to people. Being able to communicate is gold. So
it really is. You've got to do. You can't solve your case behind your laptop. It's just get out there and talk.
I've been saying that for years. That's absolutely correct. You got to get out there and do it. If you're one of those detectives that's sitting behind your keyboard hoping that you're going to solve it based off of some search on something or a search warrant, you got to get out there and hit the streets. That's just where it's at. Man, I'll tell you what, buddy, I could talk to you for I would say days, but that's not even true. It's much more than that.
So full of
I'm
crap.
so glad.
Hours you'll be tired of it.
No, I don't think so. I'm so honored to now know you, and literally I consider you a friend from here on, buddy. And I just when with the MVAC today, I mean, how fun is that? And hopefully TBI has one. I don't know if they have one or not, but the MVAC is game changer too.
Tell me about that.
The MVAC is a microbial vacuum that was actually used to identify E. coli during the E. coli outbreak at Jack in the Box. And it is owned by Jared Bradley, who's known as the DNA guy. And while he was doing that, the FDA did not really take a lot of interest into it. Or not the FDA, the Food Administration. They didn't take a lot of interest into it. And so there was an FBI agent that happened to be buddies with Jared Bradley, who's now the owner of the company. And he goes, man, that would be cool to try that on a crime scene. And he's like, okay. So what they did is they did some experiments with it. And it has about a 7,000, what it does is it sprays a solution, a sterile solution, and it sprays it on porous materials. But you could think of like pockets that get pulled out from like a robbery, and then the pockets got turned out, or clothing from a rape victim that might have been taken off of the rape victim.
Yes.
And they have had up to a 7,000% greater chance of getting DNA than the traditional swab method.
My God.
The oldest cases that they've been able to solve from that is in 1958. There's a couple of those. But this is perfect for cases that are the 60s, the 70s, the 80s, 90s, because back then, as you're well aware, they used to package stuff in paper.
Yes.
I mean, they may not have been wearing gloves, but they still package stuff in paper, which, that's ideal. That's what you want.
Ideal. It's perfect.
And it's a machine that, it costs $52,000 roughly. It's probably up a little bit more, but I'll tell you what, Mike, it's something you guys need to look into. If you don't have one, you need one. And I'll send you a couple of links, and And I put together a proposal here in Tulsa, and we were able to get one.
I'd love to see that. We could pass that on. I know my buddy Joe's watching, so I know he would be.
Absolutely. I'm telling you, it's something that you gotta at least explore. And so I asked the owner of the company, I said, hey, just real quick, because I know we got to get off here, but I tell you what, I asked him, I said, what's the most interesting case? I'm curious. And he goes, well, there was a lady that happened to be raped and murdered, and she was thrown in a river in Illinois. And she was in a river. I mean, so imagine that. This is a rape victim that's dead in a river for days, if not longer. And once they got her out of there, they actually found a full male profile on her underwear. And that's how incredible this machine is. And I'll tell you something. It's just incredible. You know?
Is it in the infant stage, in the sense, has it been challenged in court yet?
Oh no, it's good, man. There's plenty of legality. It's plenty of legal stuff, and I'll tell you what. When you go to their website, there's a motherload of data on there that you can check out, and it's the MVAC, M-VAC, and it stands for microbial vacuum. But it's really incredible and something that you need to know about. And that's what's sad, is that I didn't know much about it either about 5 or 6 years ago, but it just came across, and I was like, ooh, we need to know about this.
Don't it pay for itself too, Jason? Like after you use it, like the first few times.
Yeah. Well, for the 52 grand, this is what you get. You get 30 tests. You get 30 tests, and you get 6 people trained on how to use it. And the thing is mobile too. I mean, you can. It's got wheels on it. You can take it to a scene if need be. But after that, every single test that you do thereafter is $150. That's nothing in our world. And really, when you consider a license for a phone, like to dump phones and stuff, that's way over $50,000. And this thing would pay, I'll tell you what, when it starts solving cases, it'll rain money. Just interestingly enough, I'll tell you a couple of cases, and one of which you're very familiar with, and that's the West Memphis 3. They're talking about using it on, I don't know what the heck they're talking about anymore. They should just get it out, get the box out, and let's just start testing. Yeah. Yes. I mean, I guess with a case like that, there's, everybody gets, I don't know what they're getting nervous about. They need to freaking test it. And I know that some of those guys that were accused of it, they're all about it, test and so forth. And I think the JonBenet Ramsey case has been in discussion before too. So, and those are the types of cases that, you got to try. If you don't swing the bat, then what are we doing here? And so I don't know what the fear is, but they've just got to jump in there and do it. But this thing is used throughout the world. They've only had one machine that is actually, wore out, and that's because this one agency uses it from everything from shoplifting to murder.
Wow.
Anyway,
that's the thing, is the advances in technology are so, and AI and all that, it's just spinning so fast that
yes,
I'm hoping that one day murders will be just obsolete.
Well, I'll tell you this too, Mike, and you probably already know about this, and we'll talk more about it, and anything that I've got, I'll definitely share with you. But AI right now, for these cold cases, I mean, they're importing interviews and just the whole case book into AI, and they're popping out where the inconsistencies are and what questions to ask the suspect. Wow. and the likely suspect that we're talking about here. That's AI.
That's scary.
And, it is scary, but it's I'll tell you what, I mean, there could be a killer in here watching tonight, and if you are, I'll just tell you, you better be sweating it, because I tell that when I'm speaking, when I speak all over the place. And just lastly, I mean, do you speak? I'm just curious.
Yes,
because
I do. I haven't since my sheriffing days, but
okay, well,
don't mind getting around.
We might have to have you in Texas and to speak down there in San Antonio, and
he does a good job, Jason. I've seen him.
Really? You're going to have to convince me of that. I mean, really,
I have. I've trained with him. He had the people got tired of hearing me talk. When he come up, they definitely forgot about me. But,
all right, Danny.
Well, I doubt it.
$100, I promise.
Hey,
well, listen.
I know we don't have much time, Jason, and I know we're getting low, but I was really wanting to ask him about this Tennessee murder trails that he's doing in this.
Let's talk about that.
One in particular case that just blows my mind. I actually watched that show today about Bruce Littleton and how he. You don't have to go in because I know that's a long case, but just like hit the high points of that and how he watched himself being. It was at his own funeral and fell out of a tree.
Basically, Jason, he set up his own death, and was elaborate and all in it. Even found a victim that looked like him. This was Joe Craig's case. He did an amazing job, but found a victim and actually and set it up where he killed the victim, put him in a car, he set the car on fire in Grundy County, and our medical examiner at that time identified Bruce Littleton as the victim, and it wasn't him. And if it wasn't for Joe Craig, who was involved in the case, he found that they examined the body and found out that this was not, that Littleton was actually living a different life, and it caught up with him. So that's a great case. But the Tennessee Murder Trails case podcast is basically just myself and Joe Craig telling our stories about all the different murders, but we're doing it in a fashion in which it's geared toward the victim. We're also doing it. What's different about this is that Joe and I are speaking or talking. Our moderator actually is Alex Dennis, the very, very beautiful girl you saw on the newscast, and we also have Jordan Taylor, our producer and editor, and just a whiz kid of everything. And so anyway, we thought, let's put these out and see. And we wanted to make it quality. We want to make it something that people would stop and watch, and they average about 35 minutes. One case lasts about an hour. It's the Leanne Green abduction case that was really big in the 80s. But it's just one of those in which we want to put out a really good product about how these cases came together. Is way before social media and all that. But it's entertaining as well. So we're pretty proud of it.
Where do we find that? Is it on YouTube?
It is on YouTube. It's a Tennessee Murder Trails. And right now, I think there's 13 episodes out. We have, the murders of different people from all walks of life, from state troopers to just kids. I mean, teenagers. They're but how the cases came together and the things that we had to do to get there to solve it is really interesting. So it's good stories that I think a lot of people really enjoy. You either listen to it or and either that or watch it on YouTube. But it's a lot of work, but it's another one of those labor of loves that we're doing.
Yeah. For the forensic lady in the audience, I have to. I kind of disagree with you. I don't think that anybody in that family, JonBenet Ramsey, did it. But then again, and I don't know of anything about the semen belonging to the dad on the body, but I hadn't heard that one. But I'll tell you what, I will say this. I think that case is going to get solved. I really do. I think it's going to get solved, and I've got an idea of somebody that could be involved, but who knows? But hopefully it does get solved. And golly, man, you're something else. I tell you what, I hope you had a good time.
Oh, I did.
I
had a blast. And thank y'all. Thank both of you. Jason, thank you so much for reaching out. Danny.
Good to see you again, Mike.
Yes, sir. And I really enjoyed my time with you guys, and hope
your
audience, enjoyed it as well.
Absolutely. And you learned something. You learned a little bit about the MVEC. I want you to look into that. I think it's
absolutely
a game changer. It's
Joe,
serious.
and we're going to contact our lab buddies. We're going to see if they're
well. I'll tell you what.
Guys.
Yeah, absolutely. I'll tell you what, ladies and gentlemen, I hope you've enjoyed tonight. I really do. I've had a great evening. I think he's an exception. He's very impressive. He's a very impressive guy. We're gonna be meeting again. You're gonna be speaking for us in Texas at some point. I just have this feeling. I'd love it. I would love it. Ladies and gentlemen, I hope you enjoyed tonight's episode. This is episode number 103. Wow. Next week, 104. It's going to be a buddy of mine, a retired NYPD detective, Angel Masonette, and you may have seen him on Fox News and many other things. He's a very impressive guy too, and he's involved in the task force there for terrorism, etc. And he's an impressive guy. So I don't know. I tell you what, don't click off of here, Mike. We're gonna get off here, and then I'm gonna talk to you behind the curtain. Okay. But and Amanda, thanks a lot for. I really needed to tell you thanks, because I threw a lot of photos at you, and you had to put a lot of that stuff in there, and you didn't complain one time, and I appreciate that. Thank you. You're absolutely appreciated, and thank you to you too, Chris. You're behind the curtain as well, and thank you as well. This show is not a show without you, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you for being here. Thank you for hanging in here. I was reading every single message throughout the night. I appreciate it. Thank you all very much. And until next week. Oh, and by the way, let me mention this before we get off here. I'm glad I mentioned this. I'm glad I'm thinking about it. I may be running this episode. I haven't even told Amanda or Chris this. We may be running it at 7:30 p.m. Okay. I don't know yet. My flight, I'm going to be in Indiana. My flight gets here at 6 p.m. next Friday. So we may just set it for 7:30 as opposed to 7. I apologize for any inconvenience, but I'm just letting you know that, and I'll post it on my Facebook page as to what's going to happen, and we'll see if they can even do it. But until next week, take us out, Amanda.